Welcome to the 1958 Lawyer, the show for attorneys who know the old model isn't working anymore. The billable hour, the 12-hour day, the expensive office no one visits. Your hosts, Ron and Rebecca Boxstaller, are here to question all of that and more by exploring smarter, healthier, more flexible ways to run a law firm. No more burnout, no more outdated expectations, just real conversations with attorneys who are proving there's a better way. If you're ready to build a law firm that's profitable and livable, you're in the right place. Now here are your hosts, Ron and Rebecca.
All right, welcome to the 1958 Lawyer, the podcast about business law. I'm your co-host, Ron Boxstaller, along with my co-host, Rebecca Boxstaller. In 1958, the ABA published an article that sparked the birth of a billable hour, and the legal profession hasn't looked back since. This show is about what comes next. Each episode, we sit down with attorneys, business leaders, and the people who support them to talk honestly about what it takes to build a law practice that isn't just successful, but sustainable. All right, let's get into it. Today, we're going to be talking about using an executive assistant. Rebecca, what can you tell us about this?
I can tell you that it is going to be an informative discussion about something that people need to consider and really ask themselves how they can use it to enhance their business.
So, all my years, I've had several assistants, and I've seen several attorneys basically fail at using an assistant. So I think we could break this down to the three common areas that why they fail. One is underutilization, no context for transferred information, and no roadmap. They're not planning out how to use someone.
Right. This needs to be treated as bringing on a regular full-time employee, in that you need to consider your onboarding, you need to consider the preparation that needs to be done beforehand. And that way you're setting it up to be a successful endeavor, as opposed to treating it as something that doesn't need your time because in your mind, it's just a fractional relationship.
Yeah, I think most attorneys, they probably use their executive assistant about 20% of what's actually possible. And I can speak to this from a lot of experience. Calendaring, scheduling's pretty easy. You can, set these appointments, look at my calendar. That's good calendar management in place. Email's a little bit tougher when you start doing communication, like what's important for me to talk to, who do I not need to talk to? So that takes a little bit of time. I think, I know when we set attorneys up with an executive assistant, we really want to talk to them about planning in advance. So before the EA starts with them, maybe a month before, let's start laying out what's your expectations? What will they be doing? Right. So, and then once they start, it's not like here, just dump everything, because you're going to have to train them. I know when I started with mine, I had a 3-day training program. It was all laid out. And a lot of as we're spinning up attorneys using some of the Amada EAs, we're doing the same thing. We're laying out a training program that the attorney has responsibilities to help get them ready for success.
I think that it's something that when somebody looks at using an EA, number one, they might just think it's going to be a very simple process and not put time into planning. Or conversely, they think that it's going to be too much work, and so they don't want to put the time into planning. But what you find is that pre-planning period is essential because it really gives you a chance to sit back, you being the person who's going to be using the EA. It gives them a chance to sit back and analyze their business and their needs and figure out a systematic way to help hand off work. And putting time into those thoughts beforehand makes the onset of the relationship with their EA so much more beneficial to themselves and to their business.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really key to understand what they can do. They're going to help you with your billing. Are they going to be doing invoicing? Are they helping with your travel, event planning? Are they working with your spouse? Special projects. I know Camilla has been, for me, has been doing a ton of special projects. She has certain skills that I either don't have or just don't want to do. Research, kind of a big one, is doing some research, client coordination. So kind of moving in there. I think when they're talking to bringing in, when you're thinking about how you're going to utilize that executive assistant, what would I delegate if I knew it would be done well? Like if they're going to do it just like I would, what would I be willing to delegate? Let's start with that. let's just lay out a list of what's it going what are those things that I don't need a law degree to do. That's like the
Right.
first good place to start.
That is a good place to start. And it's thinking deeply about those things. Because as you've mentioned a few times, inbox or email management, I think people think of as a very easy go-to, but then you have to think deeply about it. How are you going to manage or request that your emails be handled? Like you mentioned, some are essential for you to end up responding to, some you don't ever need to see. And those standards or boundaries need to be set up beforehand on your own so that when you're training someone, there's a system in place for how they can make those decisions
Yep.
and how things will be flagged so that you're both clearly understanding after emails have been gone through what responsibility is still going to be yours and what's not. When you go and you look at it, the last thing you need to be doing is spending all of your time reviewing what has already been viewed. So there
Right.
needs to be a very clear way of how things will be flagged and handled and a clear path for the EA to understand what you consider to be flagged for you to view personally and what you don't need to see.
Yeah. So many of us go back to our old habits, right? We want to and I'm going to go review what they just did. Well, that's kind of a
Right.
waste of my time. There's
Mhm.
other things I can be out there picking up new business or actually doing the work that I already brought in. Let's talk a little bit about the playbook. Amada's rolled out a playbook. So here's the structure, which is kind of I guess what's made it successful is we put together a structure of how you're going to use your EA.
Mhm.
Prep before day one, audit tasks, set up access, write your delegation list, be prepared before they even start. Run a real intake session, 60 to 90 minutes. You're going to have to dedicate to going through things with your EA. Record it if at all possible. Do a Loom recording, a Zoom recording so that they have that later on. They can refer back to it and they're going to call you and ask those questions. Set authority boundaries. What's the flag system? What's a red flag? What's a yellow flag? What's a green flag? What can I go ahead and move forward with? What are things that I definitely need to run by, or the EA needs to run by the attorney? And with our EA, it's pretty much if it's a contract, it comes to me. If it's a legal matter, and if it's any client, I definitely want to be talking to them.
I
But
think
yeah,
I think as somebody is going through this process, it's important to think of this person as a strategic support partner. It's not someone that you're just assigning one-off tasks to. We're going to assume that someone has been hired who is high level, somebody who wants responsibility, someone who is capable of doing everything that you're going to ask. So it's not use this person to send an email when I ask them, and this is what they should say. It's allowing someone the freedom to respond to things and to handle processes and procedures in the way that you've laid out, and to give them free reign enough so that not every decision they need to make ends up being a phone call or an email to you to check it. I think of traveling. If you're going to ask them to book a trip, either give them the budget overall, let them know what airlines you prefer. And then as long as they stay within that budget for the airline, for the hotel, then they are free to make the booking. It shouldn't be a situation where they research the flights, then they call you and tell you what the cost options are. Then they go back and they look, and then they find
oh,
that flight is booked. And then they have to ask you another time. You need to tell them, these are the times I will fly. This is how much I'm going to spend. And then allow them to book it. So you're not just delegating simple one-off tasks. You're delegating a whole system to them, and you need to allow them to be responsible for it.
absolutely. And then I think you want to go back to that. They're on board for 30 days and sit down and review. Like, here's what was good. Here's things we need to work on. Make sure there's no friction. Let's not waste the next 6 months, right? Diagnose everything right there and have a really sit down and review. It's not bad. It's just let's talk. Maybe and the EA needs to be able to talk too. Here's things I didn't understand or wasn't communicated clearly. Let's make sure we get those off the table so it's going to be a successful relationship as we move forward.
Right. But even before you do that 30-day touch base, part of your communication strategy is going to be having a weekly touch base. Every Friday afternoon, you summarize the week and you get ready for the next week or whatever date you choose,
Right.
which gives you an opportunity also then to say, these are the things that maybe could have gone a little bit differently during the week. And so let's incorporate a difference process into that before we head into the next week. You don't want
Absolutely.
to carry those things, like you said, too long,
Yeah, I
especially when
think
they're probably easy fixes.
when you're sitting with your EA and you got your intake session, and it's that 60 to 90 minutes, very, very important. Go over your 5 to 10 top clients by name so they know who that is, how you want communication, what's your preferences to communicate. Some people want to see an email, some people pick up the phone and call me. Some people, we use Teams internally. Some people might use text. So understand what that's going to be. Scheduling non-negotiables. What things that these don't move, right? I have certain things like if you don't move my 6 a.m. Tuesday, Thursday bike rides. It's non-negotiable. Of course, I don't have too many people calling me and asking for a meeting at that time anyway, so it works out really well.
Right.
Inbox triage rules. And this is an interesting one. I didn't think about this when my executive assistant started working with me, but we had just moved over to a different spam email system. So certain, majority of all emails left, they always been, unless they've already been accepted, going right into junk. Now I had been cleaning this out on my own. I take a Saturday and just sit there and listen to music and clean out, 500 emails. But I had not told my executive assistant about this, so that she was just ignoring that junk
Right.
email folder to a very, very, very big number. And then it turns out, some legitimate emails are in there
Mm-hmm.
because they hadn't all been accepted at this point. So that was like a hiccup that, my fault. I hadn't told her and explained it to her what it was. But once we did, we were able to triage it and get it cleaned up. And now it won't be an issue going forward.
Right.
No
As you're coming up
landmine
with
sensitivities. I'm sorry, go ahead.
as you're coming up with your list, as you're doing your pre-work,
Mm-hmm.
then it's important to, maybe keep an open notebook or however you're going to keep notes. And as you're going through your emails yourself, jotting down what you do. Because, of course, it's not front of mind that you always knew to check your junk mail. And most people don't,
Right.
right? Until we switched to this email, I never looked at my junk mail. So you have to be mindful of what you're doing and take a minute to think from an operational standpoint as you're going through the processes yourself that you plan to hand off. What are your steps in doing that? And then incorporate that into your onboarding.
Yep. Excellent. Kind of the last couple of things that you want to address: escalation thresholds. Who do they go up to if something comes up? We got a high level client calling. Do they call you directly? Do they call on your cell phone? Understand what those rules are going to be so that they are make sure they're doing it the right way, and you're not having an irate client because they couldn't get through to you. I know that Camilla answers my phones. The receptionist takes the call and then sends it to Camila. If there's something that they need right away, she's calling me. So make sure you understand what that's going to be. What tools and access overview. If you're setting up in Office 365, you're using Google, whatever platform you're using, make sure those rules are in place so that your EA has access to those before they start or right as soon as they start.
Absolutely. The onboarding is probably even more so important than somebody who's sitting in the office with you. If somebody's in the office with you and you don't have all of their technology set up in advance, or there's a piece missing from the onboarding, you can actually have them participate in it. But when somebody is sitting remotely and they don't have the access to move forward with anything until their technology is working, it's essential that you have all that figured out beforehand. And also just for the person using the EA to feel like this is going to be a good relationship, you don't want to be reactive to everything that comes up in that first 3 days or week, where it seems that every interaction with your EA is really just adding to your to-do list.
Right.
But when that's happening, it's generally because the initial onboarding wasn't as clear as it could have been.
Absolutely. It just makes me laugh at some of the attorneys I've worked with in the past, and they sign up for an EA, and then the EA would say, I'm not getting any work. And I talk to the attorney and they'd say, I'm too busy. Well,
Right.
yeah, this is exactly. You got to actually set aside time and start unloading some of that work because most of the work they're doing is not things they need to have a law degree to do.
Mm-hmm. And you have to think as you decide what you're going to offload, it's really just the ability for an attorney to do the work that only he or she can do is what the attorney needs to hold on to. And if it's work that somebody else can do, then that's what you need to give away. And a real payoff in that is that once the EA is up and running, that mental clarity that comes from not having to check those things, having decision fatigue because you're dealing with small decisions all day long, allows you to focus on the larger decisions, and somebody else can handle those smaller ones for you.
Absolutely. Let's jump into my favorite topic. It's going to be delegate, don't just assign.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that a lot of people have to learn to do. Hard for me to get my mind around because I'm a great delegator. I think a lot of us are at home, but delegation is huge. You don't have to do everything. You just got to have people you can trust and you count on, you believe in, and delegate for them to do it. Now, send this email is not a good way to communicate. Here's what the client needs to feel is a better way to communicate. Transferring why you want them to do it and what you're trying to get out of it, and not just telling them what to do. If you have no context, you got no reasoning, it leads to a one-time execution, and they're not learning how they're going to do it the next time. And then you're going to be involved the next time when you don't want to be. You want to be involved that very first time, right? Build independent judgment. It leads to autonomous actions.
Mm-hmm. You need to spend time teaching your EA about your culture and who you are as a firm. What is your company about? That helps them then understand how to move forward with their communication and the voice or the sound that they need to have in their communications. If they know that the focus is very client-centric, then they're going to act in that way. But they're not going to understand that walking in the door. They need to spend some time learning about the history of your firm and learning about where you want the firm to go and what the sense of your firm needs to be. What's the most important thing that you want people to walk away thinking or feeling when they've had interactions with people that represent you?
Absolutely. And yeah, that's a great point. If they're representing you, you want to make sure they understand how you're thinking, how you want things handled, and they'll start doing it. And, get past that first 30, 60 days, they're going to start in a real good rhythm of representing you. And that's what you want to see happen. And that's the benefits. That's why you want to use an EA.
Right. And speaking to that a little bit is also that does take a little time. That's not going to happen on day 3. And so when you begin using an EA, you need to understand that there's going to be that time frame where they really start internalizing who you are and the job you expect so that they can do more and more of that on their own. And so you need to just sit through it during that time that you're teaching them to get to the real rewards on the other side. And I'm not talking a year down the road. I'm talking a month down the road.
Yeah. A good EA will get their good hang of things within a month.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Defining authority boundaries, kind of mentioned this earlier in the show. Act, flag, hold. What can they decide independently? What needs a quick check-in first? Maybe it's a quick email, text. You want to just double check on this. And then what requires your direct involvement? And there are certain things that we absolutely got to be involved in. But define those as it is. And maybe you don't know because you're not thinking through it when they first start. But over the first 30 days, let's think through that as things are happening. Take notes. So you're ready on that 30-day review. Those are the things you want to be talking about.
Right. And I will say you even need to think about how you're going to set up your own technology in this position, because if your flag quick check-in is that they need to send you an email rather than a Teams or a text or a message over your phone system, then that's just looping you back into your email. You're checking your email again to see if they sent anything. So at the very least in that place, you would want to set up an email rule where their emails are going to their own folder and you have the discipline to only check that folder if something has come in from them. I would say it's probably better to maybe use Teams or something, because as it can be once you're in email, it's really hard not to click and look. So, obviously that's a personal preference, but you do need to think about the way they're going to communicate with you, not looping you back into what you're trying to stay away from.
Yeah, absolutely. The 30-day review, 30 minutes at day 30 prevents 6 months of drift. Don't take the time, review with them what's good, what's not so good, what is your EA handled well, expand there, what's missed, was it a skill, a context, or a clarity gap? What's ready to go to scope in month 2? Or what's ready to add to scope? So maybe you didn't start them with everything you wanted to do that first month, but okay, they got through those things, and now I got 5 more things that I'm going to put on your plate. Now remember, most of us are using our EAs for about 20% of what they're capable of doing. And a good portion is why we do fractional executive assistants, because most people actually use about 30 hours a month. So if you're using a fractional one, you got 30 hours a month, you know what you're going to get out and you're going to get your money's worth. If you're bringing on someone full time, you need 173 hours of work every month. And it's, not many of us have that kind of work to really offload to an EA. And how is the communication rhythm working? How's that going? You're not taught, I've talked to attorneys like, man, I'm not talking to my EA all the time. Well, you shouldn't be. They're doing their work and you're doing your work. It doesn't mean you're talking every day even, but there might be some kind of communication going on.
And I think it's important on this review to remember that no good communication is one-sided. So this isn't necessarily a time for someone to give a litany of their review of things and then think the conversation is over. This is give and take between the EA and the attorney. Oftentimes, the EA might be able to recommend what the things that can add to scope are. They've seen you work for 30 days. They understand where some of your blockades may be. And so there's real value to allowing them to also give you their 30-day feedback.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. The long game. Let's kind of jump into what the long game looks like. Week 1, calibration and context. Let's figure those things out. Month 1, core tasks owning. What do I got? This is my core things I'm doing. Are we going to start adding things there the next month, 2, 3? Month 3, they should have independent judgment. They should be able to be running on their own, doing a lot of those things that, that maybe they didn't start up, but they get month 3, they got a pretty good rhythm going on. And then by month 6, their operate as your proxy. So.
Right. I think this is really where the mental clarity from not having to have decision fatigue, you see the value of that, and the time where you are really doing the tasks that only you can do.
Yeah, absolutely. The relationship compounds over time, right? So you got to invest in it to what you want to get out of it. And very important to know, we have lead computations quite often, is fractional does not mean disposable. Protect and invest your relationship. This is an important person within your work environment, your life, to make you more successful and have a balanced life. So put the investment in up front. It's going to pay dividends for you.
Right. And I will even say that as you definitely do want to protect and invest the relationship, but as we know, sometimes business relationships change. So as you're working in those first months with your EA, as they're taking over tasks, you also want them to be writing an SOP of what they're doing, so that if you do end up having to make a change, you're not necessarily starting again from a fresh spot. You can use their knowledge and what they've put together to transfer to a new EA if needed.
Absolutely. That's a great point. All right. Well, let's kind of talk about what's your first steps? You're listening to the show. You're like, I'm ready to get an EA. I think this is the good step for me. A fractional EA will work really, really good. I'm going to sign in for $30, 30 hours a month. The first thing you need to do is write down your top 10 tasks to delegate with specifics, not categories. Be very specific of what you want to have that EA do. So when they do start, you're ready. And now I'd even tell you that, because if I'm bringing you on board, I'm going to ask you to provide those things to me so we can put that into a training program and have really specific what we're going to be getting done and when it's going to get done, so that it's going to be a successful relationship going forward. That list, go ahead.
You have to remember that while this person may have years of EA experience, they are new to you and they're new to your firm, and they can't read your mind. And so their knowledge is only going to be as deep as if you're only giving them a broad overview. That's what the more specific you can be, the better it's going. This isn't, we're focusing just on how it's going to be really helpful to the person using the EA. But if we're speaking to protecting the relationship, we also have to know that we want them to have positive onboarding experience. We want them to feel like they're being set up for success, not in an unorganized position that they don't know day to day what they're supposed to be doing or how it feeds the organization. Right. So those specifics help with both of those things.
Absolutely. If you can't articulate what to hand off, no E is going to help you. So just keep that in mind. If you can't figure out what you can hand off and then put it in writing, you're going to struggle. And maybe you just don't need an EA. All right. Start with the list and everything else follows.
Right.
All right. That's kind of rolls into what we believe, onboarding an EA. Questions or answers, please reach out to us after the show. We have a slideshow. We'll put that into the slide notes. I think we'll try to anyway. And we'll go from there. RB, anything you want to end with?
No, I think that I would just encourage people to look into the podcast notes and check out the slides and the presentation.
Awesome. All right, folks, that's it for today. Today's conversation got you thinking about your own practice. I hope you'll take one idea and put it to work this week. We hope you'll actually start using the EA because it's very effective, helps people be more successful and live a balanced life. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with a colleague who could use it. The 1958 Lawyer is brought to you by Amada. For more than 30 years, Amada has helped law firms of all sizes do more with less. Build on our 4 pillars: fractional support staff, virtual office options, office space, and legal community. So until next time, keep building your law firm.
Thanks for listening to the 1958 Lawyer. If you like the show, tell a friend, and please subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to hear more about Ron, Rebecca, or Amada, go to amataoffices.com. That's amataoffices.com. All the links are also in the show notes.